Just before this episode, here's how you can get more from Never a Truer Word. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify, you can subscribe to this channel to get early access to the weekly analysis episodes, video episodes so you can see the statements as I analyse them, and exclusive content too. And if you're here on YouTube, then become a member of the channel to get early access to everything and exclusive content not available anywhere else. Who is the Watcher, and what does the Watcher want? That's what we're going to try and find out in this series from Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what is the Watcher? Well, the Watcher is a true story. It's a real life story made famous in a dramatization by Netflix, but it really did happen to a couple. It happened to Derek and Maria Broaddus. They bought a house in Westfield, New Jersey in 2014, and shortly afterwards they started receiving anonymous letters. Who was sending them and what did they want? That is what I'm very interested in. All I do know is that the Broadduses were very scared by these letters. Thank you to the Consult podcast, the Real FBI Profiler podcast. They covered the Watcher and got my interest going big time in it. I thoroughly recommend their 2 episodes in the series looking at the Watcher. The Watcher wrote 4 letters that we know of, and so therefore, for someone who analyses words, it's perfect for me to get stuck into. So we're going to ask, who is the Watcher? What is their intention? What is it that the Watcher wants by looking at their letters or partial letters? Not all of the letters have been published. There's some bits of them that are hidden. We don't even know if there were 4 letters, but I've pieced together what I can from articles very close to the case. And these are anonymous letters. Why are letters anonymous? Well, the identity is sensitive. Either you're doing something illegal and you don't want anyone to know it's you, or you're very close or you're known to the person who is receiving the letters, and therefore, again, you do not want the trouble of them knowing who sent the letters, i.e. you. Anonymous letters as well. What is it they want? Often there is a threat or there's some sort of call to action. You must do this or you must stop doing that. So why are they doing it? Are you ready? Let's have a look at the first letter that the Broadduses received. The letter begins, "Dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard. Allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. The letter says you have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted, and then it's asked, are there more on the way? The letter continues, do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive past 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out of any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. The Watcher. So the letter starts, dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard. The very first word gets me. We don't write letters much anymore. We tend to do emails and we do much less salutations than we used to when we wrote letters. It would always be dear and then the name of the person that we were addressing, or dear sir and madam. This starts beyond that with dearest. Quite a flourish going on there. And dearest, more used by women than men. I'm not saying men can't say dearest. I am saying that women are more likely to say dearest than men are. So is this the first tell in who the Watcher is? Is the Watcher female. Dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard. Now, new neighbour is interesting. Number one, that's singular. That's not addressed to the family. It's not addressed to Mr. and Mrs. or Derek and Maria. It's new neighbour. And all the way through the letter, the watcher only addresses one person. That gets me thinking, who are they addressing and why are they only addressing one person? They're not addressing the family at all. They are addressing this singular person all the way through. So is it just one of the Broadduses that is the subject of the watcher and why they want to write this letter? The other thing about new neighbour is it says, hey, I'm a neighbour too, because to be a neighbour, you have to be a neighbour yourself. And hey, I am part of the neighbourhood because I can welcome you to the neighbourhood. So the first thing an anonymous letter writer does is say where they live. Is that likely? Are they really saying, hey, I'm local, I'm quite nearby? I think this might be one of the red herrings that they might throw out there to try and confuse who they are, confuse their identity. Nice bit of politeness here with allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood. So this is, again, potentially female with all this kind of asking for permission to do something, which is a slightly more female than male way of talking or writing. Allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood. But this beginning, dearest new neighbour at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood, could all have been said with just hello. Hello and welcome. Anything more than that is extra, and extra is revealing. It reveals what it is that person wants to get across. And I think with this, it's those red herrings. It's saying, I am a neighbour. So I'm thinking already, potentially female and potentially not someone from the neighbourhood. The letter continues, how did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? You'll notice they call the house 657 Boulevard by its address a lot, almost giving it like a characteristic here, or a name, if you like, a human quality of the name here, 657 Boulevard. They mention that a lot. Also making the house seem human is did the house call to you with its force within? So calling, that's something humans do. Houses don't call, and having a force within, again, that's something that humans do. Houses don't do that. So I'm seeing this concept of the house as a person. When I first heard and read these letters, I thought they were trying to create a character out of the house, very much like some horror films you might see where there's a malevolent house that's trying to trap people and kill people inside it. But I'm not so sure about that as I went on and did my analysis, which I will talk about a little bit more as we go through the letters. They say, how did you end up here? Now, this is very interesting. Does this show some intelligence on the part of the person? Were they aware that the Broadduses would read the letter inside the house? So therefore, it would be here rather than how did you end up there, which is what someone writing remotely would do. From their point of view, they would say there. Or is this something saying this is a local person or even closer to the house with that word here? Interesting word choice there. The letter continues, 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades. Once again, we have this naming of the house, 657 Boulevard. Although, who else calls houses by addresses? I call most of the houses that I know by the names of the owners or the people I know that live there. People that call houses by addresses, mailmen. Delivery drivers, they always think about they don't know who lives there, they know the address. Real estate agents as well, and this focuses very much on a house. So is this someone who really thinks of houses as part of their life as addresses rather than by the names of the people that live there? And they talk about 657 Boulevard having been the subject of my family for decades. The subject of your family for decades? Has your family had a subject of anything for decades? Is very, very strange wording. What it does reveal is that this is not purporting to come from someone who has owned the house or lived in the house. It's been the subject of my family for decades. And also, it's been the subject of my family for decades. Now, look at all the round, generic numbers that come up here. So it's been the subject of my family for decades, not 73 years or anything like that, just decades. Very generic number. It approaches its 110th birthday. Again, kind of generic number. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s. My father watched in the 1960s. Very generic numbers. And also, that really says my grandfather watched the house for these 10 years in the 1920s, or less than that if it was in the 1920s. And my father watched in the 1960s. So the house has not been watched by anyone since 1969, according to this. That will become important later. But I've got here someone with not a lot of knowledge of the house, I think. I think what we have here is just some real generic numbers coming out. More on the house as a human, the waiting for its second coming. That is again putting some human characteristics on this house. I'm also interested in how this second coming is going on. We have the grandfather in the 20s, the father in the 60s, so that would be the second coming in the 60s, because they're watching and waiting for its second coming. Or did the father watch and not see the second coming? Really don't know. Very strange way of looking at it. Now, this could be true, but it's just something I noticed. There's this 40-year generational jump. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and 40 years later, my father watched the house in the 1960s. Now, this was 2014, so that is longer. That is almost 55 years of a jump there, rather than that jump that was going on of 40 years. Interesting. And then they do something that's kind of classic in deception. Instead of stating facts, they ask questions. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? All these questions. Asking questions in this anonymous way can be really creepy, because we assume that they're asking these questions because they know the answers. However, they're not sharing the history of the house, which would be maybe more scary, even if they were making it up. They're not sharing what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard, which again, even if they were making it up, would be scary. Instead, they're asking these questions, a little bit of an intent to scare or to create some sort of unknown to fill their mind with a little bit of paranoia, but also suggests to me that this letter writer does not know the history of the house, does not know what lies within the walls, because they just don't know. They are not that close to the house to know there. The letter continues, I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, 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 bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. We've got this concept of the watcher again. I see already that you have flooded the house with contractors. Now, that is maybe them wanting to think or get across that there are eyeballs on this house, that the watcher has eyeballs on this house. But all I'll say is, I see doesn't always mean I see with my eyes. I see on Facebook, I see on Instagram, for instance. I see from record, maybe some requests that have been made to do some work on the house somewhere. That could be how they see that these contractors are at 657 Boulevard. They really want us to think that they are looking and watching the house. But I see does not mean I see with my naked eye. They talk about the house being flooded with contractors. Now, that was interesting to me. That is a very unique way, strange way, standout way, I guess, of talking about lots of workers being in there on the house. You have flooded the house with contractors. Why is that word the most appropriate word for them to describe how these contractors go? Loads more on the house as a person. We've got the name of the house again twice, 657 Boulevard, and you don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. You can't make a house unhappy, by the way. So again, we've got this attempt to create this personality and this person out of the house. Remember I said this person might work in real estate or something like that earlier. So they've talked about the contractors on the house. Now, that's a perfectly legitimate term to describe people that are turned up to work on the house, as would workmen, decorators, plumbers, builders, whatever it may be. But they spoke about contractors. That's quite a business term to refer to those people that turn up to do work on the house. So again, real estate, does their job involve real estate or architecture or design of buildings or something like that? Because there's a few kind of trade terms starting to come in. They say the contractors are there so that you can destroy the house. So they do not know that the house has been destroyed. They only think that the house may be destroyed in the future. There's a possibility this might happen. So they don't have any knowledge of the work that has gone on so far inside. They just know that the potential is there in the future. You can destroy the house, as well as you don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. Not you are making it unhappy with all that work you're doing. You just don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. So I think here that again, I got this sense of remoteness. They want to see how close they are, talking about being in a neighbourhood and saying they can see the contractors, but they do not know what has happened inside the house. So they can't say that the house has been destroyed, or even you're going to destroy the house with what you're doing. It's just potential in the future, and the potential that the house could be unhappy. And by the way, destroy the house as it was supposed to be, not as it is right now either. So they just do not know the scope of the work that's going on inside. There's this tisk, 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 bad move section. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Again, a bit more of a feminine thing to say than a masculine thing to say. Tisk, 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 bad move. And bad move, well, what's happened there? The guys have moved into the house. So again, that's something real estate agents talk about. So we've got quite a bit there with the address twice. The house as an address, not the house is where someone lives. We've got contractors, and we've got bad move showing up as well. What do you think of that? Because move comes up more times in the other letters, this concept of move. You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. And then the anonymous correspondent asks if there are more on the way. So this is where I think there's something really going on, because they've jumped from the fact that there's work done in the house to focusing in on the children. You have children, and asking if there's more on the way. That's a sensitive question, isn't it? Why are they interested in if the Broadduses have more children on the way? Now, this starts to feel a little bit personal, doesn't it? Talking about the children. So far, it's been do not upset the house. And then it is, I have my eyes on the children. And then the interest in if there are more on the way. There's a sensitivity here for me that I can see that the watcher has towards the Broadduses' children. We have some vagueness in how many children the Broadduses have in the views of the watcher. They say, so far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. So again, we've got the I have seen them and that I've counted them. That makes, that is that thing again of, look, I'm looking, I've got my eyeballs on this, but I'll say again, they may be watching on social media or in other places to have seen the children and to have counted the children. And is this vague, or is this deliberately vague? One way to show that you're not close to a person at all is to be vague about the number of children that they have. If you are close to these people, you'll know exactly how many children they have, but here they want to show some vagueness by doing it twice. I think there are 3 that I have counted. I think that could be deliberately vague. Does the watcher know for a fact how many children they have? I think that's likely. And I have seen them is that thing that they really want to scare them by thinking that the watcher is watching the house all the time. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Now this is where it gets all a little bit too scary, referring to the children as young blood. Previously, I've said that I think this might be a female, but that is a very, very visceral term, young blood, to refer to children, not something that I would associate with female. What I would say, though, is this is an attempt to create another character. So we have young blood. The children are not children anymore. They are young blood, which is an attempt to maybe make them seem a bit more distant. They're not someone's children. They're young blood, almost like a character from a horror film. We have here the watcher at the centre of it. So these are the young blood that I requested, better for me. So they're getting very selfish here. It was the house that was calling them before. Remember, did the house call to you with its force within? But now it's the watcher themselves that seems to have been requesting this. I requested this young blood, and if you bring them, it's better for me, and I will call them and draw them to me. Not the house calling them this time. It's the watcher calling these people. What's going on there? Once again, we have this sensitivity to that. The children. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Interesting. Another thing that real estate agents might say, hey, your house is getting too small for the growing family. They must come across that all the time. Families that are growing and wanting to move to a bigger house. And we have that concept again of the family getting bigger. Does the watcher have something against this family growing, about the Broadduses potentially having more children? They say, was it greed to bring me your children? That's nonsensical. That does not make sense. It would not be greedy to bring someone something. That would be generous to bring someone something. So why was it greed to bring me your children? Is it maybe that they think it's showing off, or greed is something that's in bad taste and this person does not want to see the children, or thinks that the Broadduses showing off their children would be in bad taste towards them? But man, the focus on the Broadduses' children, the sensitivity to around that is really, really strange. The watcher says, once I know their names, I will call to them. Now, I think this is just one of those red herrings to say, I don't know their names, because actually, to lure children your way, you do not need to know their names. It's just, come here, kid. That's all you need to do, or lure them with bait or something like that. So I think this, once again, is a little bit extra to say, I don't know their names. I think this person does know how many kids the Broadduses have and knows their names. But one thing here, the growing family, calling the children young blood and saying, when I know their names, I will call them to me. It's got very personal. The watcher continues, who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive past 657 Boulevard every day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I am in one. Look out of any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard and all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. This is an anonymous letter. There are no need for clues. There really isn't. There is no need for clues other than to cause fright, to be scary, to say, I am very close. So I think for me, something again that says this person is not physically close to 657 Boulevard, but they may be close personally to the Broadduses, but they are not physically close to that house. They want to appear close, but I don't think they are close. What I do think is interesting in the order that they mentioned the possibilities. Cars that drive past, the windows you can see, i.e. the neighbours, and the people who stroll past. Well, cars that drive by, hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive past each day. Well, this person's already said they are a neighbour. They've said, hey, new neighbour, welcome to the neighbourhood. So they're likely not one of those cars that just drive past. The cars that go somewhere, those are the neighbours' cars, or leave somewhere, those are the neighbours' cars. The cars that drive by, nah. So they're not in one of those cars. But have they driven there once? Is that why cars comes first? Okay, so they've already said they're a neighbour, and now they're saying, I might not be a neighbour. I think they have driven to look at 657 Boulevard at least once. They mention windows twice. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard, or look out of any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard. Pure stalker vibes going on. I think we might have seen that in some of the other things that are going on in that letter as well. But that talk of windows, of looking in windows, and then of knowing some details about the family and being a little bit obsessed about the family, and is the family growing? Stalker vibes. But not the kind of stalker that follows you from place to place and, follows you when you walk down the road or anything like that. This is more the modern stalker, the stalker that knows everything it can find out from looking at you on the internet through social media and other means. That's the sort of stalker I think we have got there. And the letter finishes, "Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. The Watcher." And what I get from that, and what I got from the whole letter was, some superhero movies where the sort of jokey, campy villain is giving it all the big speech to the henchmen or to the people that they've kidnapped or something like that. The whole letter has that filmic superhero film theme to it, and this has that almost Joker from Batman sort of feel to it. "Welcome, my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. The Watcher." So that's letter number 1. And what are my conclusions having looked at just that one letter? Well, the Watcher has introduced 3 characters in this letter. There is the house itself as a character, there is the Watcher as a character, and Youngblood as the children as characters. So in this one letter, the Watcher has used the characterization of people or things 3 times. We have the character of the house, the character of the Watcher, and this character of young blood to represent the children. Why did the Watcher write the letter? What was the intent behind it? Well, if we look at it, there's an introduction to say, "Hi, this is me, and I'm here in your life." They want to get across to the Broadduses that they are being watched, that they are being eyeballed, that the Watcher, hence the name, is watching them and knows what is going on. They want to show closeness. Now, they might not be close, but their intent is to show how close they are and to say they have physical eyes on the Broadduses and on the house itself. And I think there must be some intent to scare the Broadduses, especially the chat around the children, but some of the creepier stuff around the house being watched for decades, and the history of the house and what lies within its walls. I think there is an intent to scare there, and quite a personal intent to scare when it gets to the children. So what does the Watcher know? What facts is the Watcher aware of around the Broadduses and the house? Well, these are the ones that I've got. They're aware of the children. They know how many children the Broadduses have. They know the Broadduses have got the house. They know that, well, when they may be renting it, they may have purchased it, but they know, in the Watcher's words, that they are in that house. They are new neighbours. They know about the contractors. They know the contractors are there. They know the contractors are doing some work. And that would suggest to me that the Watcher has been there to the house at least once, or past the house at least once, or they have some very good inside information and intelligence. So who is the Watcher? Let's have a first run at this after letter 1. They are a fan of literature, or a fan of films, or a fan of both, but we certainly have this flourish in the writing that suggests they read a lot, and an imagination that seems to have been informed by maybe horror books, horror films. Certainly seem to be a fan of the horror genre, because that's what seems to be going on here. I said they are a female a lot of the times during the analysis. Maybe they could be a flamboyant male that uses some of that female word choices, or more female word choices, but I do feel they are a female, especially that fixation on children and having more children as well. That's quite a female trait to be showing off. So yeah, I do think that we have a female letter writer here at the moment. They do seem to be very interested in real estate. Does their job involve real estate? They use so many concepts. The address of the house, talking about moving, the contractors and so on. Now look, maybe this whole thing did start with a real estate transaction, so maybe that's why these real estate terms come in. But I would be asking, do they work in real estate, or are they very close or in a related field to real estate? And obviously brought up quite well, because the Watcher knows how to be polite. Now, in the next episode, we'll look at letter 2. Will that change things? Let's have a look at letter 2, and it starts, Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, and they have spelt Broaddus wrong there. Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, welcome again to your new house at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. The Watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks, especially about their children, and this part is probably being kept anonymous around the letter, but the letter identified the Broadduses' 3 kids by birth order and by their nicknames, the ones that Maria had been yelling. I'm pleased to know the names now, the letter continues, and the name of the young blood that you have brought to me. You certainly say their names often. The letter asked about one child in particular, whom the letter writer had seen using an easel inside an enclosed porch. Is she the artist in the family? The letter asked. 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic? Or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me know who is in which bedroom, then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move through the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard and now has brought you to me. Have a happy moving in day. You know I will be watching. We will analyse that letter in episode 2 of The Watcher. Who is The Watcher and what is it they want? If you want to make sure you get that, you can hit the subscribe button on YouTube or follow on Spotify and you will get the next episode as soon as it's launched. I cannot wait to hear who you think The Watcher is, so do let me know. Listen, neveratruerword.com is a website. You will find a whole load more videos and podcasts breaking down the words of people in the news to see what it is they are really saying. You can also sign up for the monthly newsletter as well. That's neveratruerword.com, and we'll see you soon for episode 2 of The Watcher from Never a Truer Word.